Tama, which I think means ball in Japanese, is essentially an old kid's toy, a ball in a maze puzzle. Before it was emulated in polygonal 3D, it would have usually been a small wooden maze with a metal ball bearing that you had to navigate by rotating it around. Except, unlike Tama, the PS1 game, those old ball in a maze puzzles were usually kind of fun. When you played them, the ball didn't feel like it was rolling through soup. The toy version didn't have an oppressive timer that sucked a lot of fun out of the experience, and the maze itself was the obstacle. It wasn't filled with coloured blocks that would kill you as soon as your hitbox grazed past them. It's 1994, and Tama is a launch title for the PS1. And it starts off simple. You tilt the world, and it makes the ball move around. This kind of game has been around forever. Pigs in Clover was invented in 1889, Labyrinth released in 1946, and even video games had done the concept before in games like Marble Madness, which came out way back in 1984. I'm going to bring up a bias alert on the screen because I genuinely love this kind of game as a concept. Monkey Ball, Cooler World, Korarimpa. I love all these games. That's why this one was so disappointing. By level 4, the game already starts to feel profoundly unfun. The controls are glacial, and paired with the addition of more and more obstacles that interfere with your ability to control the ball, and a very short time limit on every level just makes for an experience which is kind of miserable. And that misery is made worse when you realise you have a very limited number of lives. And when they're gone, they are gone. It's right back to the beginning. And I don't mean the beginning of the level, I mean the whole game just resets back to the title screen, and you are right back to level 1. Also, everything is tiny. Everything is zoomed out as far as it can go. So you're stuck trying to navigate this blue pixel through this awkward 3D geometry, where you often can't even see what's going to kill you. I get that this was the challenge of the game. A lot of games had this mentality back then. You had a limited number of lives, and when it's done, it's done. You're right back where you started. But I think this design mentality came from the arcades, where the game didn't want you to finish because the arcade owners wanted you to keep putting coins in the slot and filling their pockets with your hard-earned doubloons. That didn't need to carry over to consoles. But developers hadn't shaken the habit out of their heads yet. Tama doesn't need a timer on every level. I think it would be more fun without that timer. It didn't need lives either. It could have just let you restart each level when you die. By adding these things, it tips the game from fun into frustrating. All that these things are really doing is artificially inflating how long it takes you to complete the game, and it shows that if you took these things away, there probably wouldn't be much there. Now, I hear you out there saying, just get good. And my answer to that is no. I don't think making something hard to the point of frustration is worth my time if I'm not getting anything else out of the experience. There are other games out there that are hard to the point of frustration, but they drive us to keep going because we enjoy something else about the experience. Maybe it's because there's something that we want to see on the other side of the frustration, or because it satisfies us to persevere and see ourselves improving with each attempt. And then there are those of us who have other things to spend our time on, and can recognize when we're not enjoying something, and feel content putting it away because we don't want to persevere through a miserable experience just for the sake of it. I'm not enjoying this game. I'm not getting anything out of the experience other than more harder frustration with each new level, and I'm not searching for validation. I can just stop playing. But then, this game would have come out at a time when there were much fewer choices. Today I've got thousands of games at my fingertips. I've got a folder in my Steam library filled with games that I haven't even started to play yet. But when this game came out, it might have been all I had. It might have been the single and only game I owned on my PS1. There were definitely games that were not great games, but that I spent hours finding a way to enjoy because I was bored on a Saturday afternoon and I only had 3 games for my PlayStation. Also, games were just like this. In 1994, I didn't have a PS1, but I did have a Sega megadrive, and one of the games I had was called Radical Rex. People who thought Dark Souls was punishing when it came out did not play Radical Rex when they were 6 years old, because this game was brutal. You die, you go back to the beginning of the level. Stuff jumps out randomly to kill you all the time. The controls are awkward and uncomfortable. And if you die too many times, the whole game restarts. This isn't unique to Radical Rex either, this was all games. All games were like this. They were out to get you. 1994 was the same year that the Lion King game was released on the Mega Drive, which means it was the same year that I was exercising my frustration demons on this monkey level. My mind is conditioned to this, I'm not gonna stop. So I kept going. And then I found something out. You can zoom in. You aren't locked perpetually into this tiny overview where it's almost impossible to pass the details of what is happening in the game world. And that one small thing changed everything for me. It turned this from a toy into a game, and it also made me realize that part of my complaints about the controls were actually just a lack of understanding on my part. The controls still sucked, but they didn't suck as bad as I thought they did. I just wasn't using them properly. It's like I was trying to hammer a nail with the claw end of a hammer. I was blaming the game, but the problem was me. It was my fault. I wasn't engaging with the design of the game because I was too quick to instantly latch onto all of the things that I didn't like about it, and I didn't give it a fair chance. Then the game introduces ice physics, and now it can eat a bag of nails. That is not what this game needed. The controls already suck. The game is already a frustrating mess. Why would you add ice physics, you melons? Eventually you make it to this stage called Castle World, and just to compound on all the various ways the game likes to make you hate the way it controls, the gimmick of Castle World is that there are objects here that invert your controls if you touch them. The game always takes the worst thing, the controls, and somehow manages to make them worse as part of the rules. There are so many frustrating things like this. When you die, it seems like there's a set of respawn points, and it doesn't seem like much care was put into where they were, leading to situations where you continually respawn into a hole and die on a loop over and over again while your time bleeds away. And that timer is a constant source of anxiety. Finishing a level doesn't seem to reset your timer, it only adds a small amount to what your timer was already on. So if you finish a level with 1 second left on the clock, good luck finishing the next level with only 16 seconds to go. It's only when you finish the whole world of 5 levels that the clock actually resets. So finishing a level never feels like an achievement because you're just looking at the clock thinking there's no way that that is enough to do the next level. This can leave you in a situation where you're nearing the end of a set of levels and you're on the last one, but you just don't have enough time left to finish it, even if you were to play that level perfectly. That feels punishing and disheartening when it happens. Every new obstacle you encounter in the game, you kind of have to die to it first in order to figure out how it works. Trial and error is the only way to understand the game, but doing so is usually enough to kill your whole run. This floating platform on World 2 killed my run so many times because missing it just once might as well be game over. It sends you back to the start of the level, and you just don't have another 45 seconds to do the level again. Your timer is bleeding out. It's a death sentence. At the same time, you know that the developers of the game designed it this way. They wanted you to fail here. For all the cute music and bright colours, this game is cruel by design. Sometimes there are pickups you can find in a level that might give you a little bit of extra time. A lot of the time you'll spend more time going to get those pickups than you would if you just left them alone and went straight for the exit. I don't think I ever saw anywhere to pick up extra lives along the way, so you've got the few chances that you've got, and that's it. You better hope that you didn't just spend an hour getting to the final level only to run out of time and die, because you are going right back to the start if you do. The one good thing that the game does give you is this map overview before each level, and I found myself spending minutes each time trying to translate these coloured squares into what they might be, trying to see which paths are blocked, what routes can I take. It's the one moment where that timer isn't constantly counting down, so you can stop and breathe and actually plan something about how you're going to approach the level before scrambling to get through it as fast as possible. I came to really appreciate these moments before the level starts. And sometimes I would just hang here because I didn't really want to enter back into the anxiety of whatever the next level was going to be. I enjoyed not playing the game. I didn't want to play the game, I just wanted to rest here. Now, I've expressed a lot of frustration about this game, but I do want to say that I appreciate what it is. Tama is an experiment. It came out at a time when this 3D technology was in its infancy, and it was trying to do something with that. That's part of what makes the PS1 such an interesting console, in my opinion, was that developers were willing to experiment, to take risks, to put out weird little things. As a kid buying these games, based on whatever image was on the box art, you never really knew what you were going to get, and when you did get something weird, you spent the time delving into what it was and immersing yourself in that weirdness, because it's all you had at the time. I don't really want to be an old man shaking my fist at the sky saying things were better back in my day, and I don't want to paint a picture that today if you go into a digital game store, all you see is the same formulaic Call of Duty sequels and knockoffs and nothing weird, because I don't think that's entirely true. But I do think that over time the willingness to experiment and be creative has been beaten out of developers who work to a more standardized formula that they think is good game design, but has actually only really contributed to making a lot of games feel the same. Tama kind of sucks, but it tried something, and I think that's commendable. It's annoying for me to have to say this, but by the time I struggled through this game and reached the end, I liked it a lot more than I did at the beginning. I don't feel any sense of personal achievement for having persevered and completed it, but by spending time with it, I ended up coming around to its little quirks and oddities, and I ended up actually enjoying playing it. It reminded me of an experience I had after I left school. I went into college to study English literature and language, and the book that I was assigned was Wuthering Heights. I hated it. I hated that book so much that I ended up dropping out of college over it. Years later, I went back to a university to try again, and this time I was given a different book for my assignment. I was given Kerouac's On the Road, which is a book that I'd read recently at the time, and I liked it a lot. But at the last minute, my teacher did a rug pull on me and switched out On the Road for Wuthering Heights, and I was devastated at the time because I dropped out of college before because I hated this book so much, and now here it was being put in front of me again, and my degree was on the line over it. So that time I persevered and I read that book multiple times, I analysed the text, I took the time to engage with it, and I wrote an essay on it. And when all of that was done, I really liked Wuthering Heights. I like that book a lot. It's probably one of my favourite books. When I reflect on my experience with Wuthering Heights, and when I reflect on my experience playing Tama, not that I'm comparing the two in any way, I found that it would have been easy to dismiss them for things that I didn't like about them. But when I took the time to understand them, a lot of the problems that I had with them were actually on me. They were my problems. Tama isn't a perfect game in any way. I don't even think it's a really good game, but it's better than I initially judged it once I'd overcome the problems that I imposed on it through my own lack of understanding. I'm ranking Tama beneath Ridge Racer. It's a neat little game, I like it for what it is. It's just not as fun as Ridge Racer, so for now, that's where it's gonna sit. And that's it for Tama.